On this week's episode of I-501-CU, the podcast for nonprofit board members, I'm interviewing a new friend, somebody I just met in a mastermind group, Katie Spencer. Katie Spencer is the principal and the founder of Zipline Consulting. So, Katie, if you would, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your career, and how you came to be a board governance and other things consultant.
Yes. So I started in the nonprofit sector and spent about 15 years developing, leading, fundraising for programmatic initiatives at local level and also at the national level at Boys and Girls Clubs of America. Um, I also have a background, I have an advanced degree in cultural anthropology. So I am just curious about how groups of people and organizations function and when they don't. And I've also been a trained facilitator since 1998. So those things all wound up working very much to my advantage when my second child was coming. And I was traveling across the country for Boys and Girls Clubs of America and wanted something that wouldn't have me on airplanes so consistently. And I started consulting. So she is just turned 15. The first few of those years, I actually consulted back to Boys and Girls Clubs of America. So I really ventured out as a full-fledged consultant about a dozen years ago, and I love it. So, it's just been such a fabulous for me personally, like intersection of my skills and the things I love. But I love getting to learn about different organizations, what they do. Again, wearing that hat of like, how does this place function? Where is it maybe challenged? How do these groups of people work together? Um, so it has just been an exciting, fun journey for me for the last dozen years. And that is how I've landed here.
That's wonderful. And I love the fact that you have a degree in anthropology, because I remember back in the day when I was naive, I thought anthropology, what in the world could you do with that degree? But really, you have parlayed that, and it really is the understanding of people, which makes you perfect for the job that you're doing.
Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly on a research study, which is also what brings me to some of the topics we're going to talk about today, because what I've been doing over those dozen years is absolutely serving my clients and also looking at the trends. I see under the hood of over the dozen years, hundreds of organizations. I have talked to, I don't know how many board members, I don't know how many executive directors, CEOs. I have hundreds of interviews I've conducted with staff. I have thousands of survey responses. And a couple years ago, I went back and looked at what are the overarching themes? What are the overarching challenges? And started really like honing my practice further around those specific challenges. And so it's, really for me, this is again like that culmination of all of these interests of mine and various training settings of mine, where I feel like I've been on this incredible research journey and am putting those pieces together and really working to share them out. So organizations that don't get, that only see inside their organization can learn from and leverage what I'm seeing behind the scenes at scores and scores of organizations.
Oh, this is good, and our audience is going to benefit. And we're going to hone your skills, and I love the fact that you paused and you reflected, and you said, "What have I learned over 10 years working with hundreds of nonprofits?" So, when you and I went back and forth, one of the topics you wanted to talk about was board engagement. Board
Yeah.
engagement. Oh, and any of us who work with boards, we know that the executive director, the CEO always says, "Oh, I wish my board could be more engaged." So I want to talk about that on the podcast today. So what is going on? Paint the landscape with board engagement or lack thereof, and let's talk a little bit about what
Mhm.
can be done and what's causing it and what can be done.
Yeah, so it's something I've heard throughout my tenure as a consultant, but definitely over the last several years, it has become a very consistent refrain that I'm hearing from board leaders and executive leaders alike. Folks want a more engaged board. The board chairs, want to lead an engaged board. The executive director and the executive team, it was really needing and craving a more engaged board. So I started thinking and looking at and having conversations around what does that really mean? And from the executive side, the things I hear consistently are folks are not showing up consistently. It's sometimes hard to get a quorum. Folks are not responsive. So board members are not replying to emails, things like that. And they're not saying what they said, or they're not doing what they said they would do. So, when numerous executives have said over and over to me, I mean, I can only ask so many times before myself or my team just has to do the work. So the executive side is feeling very burdened. And like they're spending a lot of time doing quote unquote the board's work. They're also spending, excuse me, a lot of time feeling like they're chasing the board and trying to coerce them to do what they said they would do or show up or respond. On the board side, I'm hearing a lack of clarity around what it is that we need to be doing. Um, how we actually do and conduct that work. So telling me to just raise X dollars doesn't tell me how to raise. I don't know how many times I've been facilitating a board retreat and somebody raises their hand and says, "But Katie, I'm not a professional fundraiser," right? Or also a lack of comfort in that. So it's both sides are struggling with a desire to lead effectively as partners. I have yet to meet a board member who doesn't want to serve. They want to serve the mission. They want to have beneficial impact on your organization. And the executive side wants to partner effectively. Somehow there's a gap and a disconnect in the middle. And I think that's where we have been spending a lot of time as nonprofit organizations solving the problems we see above the iceberg, right? So we send more emails, we make more requests, we state that request over and over again, only to then take on the burden of doing the board's work because somebody has to, right? And on the other side, we have this lack of clarity. And, a board chair said to me, like, I'm just wait for her to tell me what to do because I honestly don't know what my role is or what my job is. So when we look under the surface, right, we see that the iceberg extends and the real roots of it are under the surface. And we haven't been tackling the roots of the challenge of board engagement. I think that's the biggest variable. The other reality is just that the world has changed, right? It used to be that if you served on a board, it was mostly men. And after work, it was sort of half social, half business. It was sort of like the golf game of a generation or so ago to go serve your community at a board meeting. We have diversified the perspectives on our boards in so many ways. And the roles everyone's playing in society, regardless of gender, race, anything else, have shifted, right? So we need to build structures in our board that reflect the way people operate today in this culture, our very, very busy world, and that reflect the fact that our board members are more diverse, their lives have great demand on them. How can they serve within the constraints and context of a modern world?
Well, you have really articulated the challenge very well. And so it's continuing to get worse. We're getting busier. I'll sum it up as that. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So it's continuing to get worse. What do we do about it? What can an executive director, what can a board chair do about it?
Yeah, really great question. So under the surface of that water, right? If we look at the roots of that iceberg, there are four pillars that I see that any organization can dive under there and do a little tweaking. And small tweaks will make a huge impact. So, just restructuring our board around a couple things, really clarifying the roles in the partnership. That's the vital foundation. So, what you need from your board changes. When you're a fledgling startup, you need a very different board. You need them to activate and engage differently. When you're 10 years in, you no longer want your board in your business on a daily basis. You need them to be serving a more strategic role, right? So, what we need from them changes. What we need a board to do at one organization is different than at another. Some organizations need our boards to be fundraising. Some have great internal fundraising infrastructure and don't need that as much from their boards. So, boards come in with an expectation of either their past service or just what they think a board service is like. We need to make sure we re-clarify what that role is and make sure everybody knows it. The second thing, the second pillar is that the work of the board needs to be clearly mapped out annually. Just like we all map out our own work plans, whether it's me running my own business or an executive director or a team lead mapping out what their work and their team's work is for the year. So, what are the expectations? What are the activities boards are working on, and how are we going to measure them? Um, so that's the second pillar. The third one is systems and tools. So we a lot of times have outdated systems and tools for our boards, and we can do some very simple things to update how our boards operate and how we make sure they're not reinventing the wheel annually. If you don't have a shared calendar at this point for your board that lists when the audit is, when annual recurring things are, you're missing a very simple opportunity to make sure everyone's on the same page, right? I see boards still getting a list on paper of the board meetings. We Folks don't use paper anymore. Even boomers, even my 82-year-old parents don't want things printed out on paper any longer. They both serve on boards. Um, I it's just like simple things. I had a board chair recently tell me, "Oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. I don't know why we haven't thought about it. Last year I forgot to buy Christmas gifts for the staff." And she felt horrible. And she said, if I just had it on an annual calendar, it would be, I would remember it. And then the next board chair wouldn't have to remember that that's part of what our board does. And again, not every board buys gifts for their staff, nor do they need to, but for their organization, that was an important way for the board to connect with staff. And she felt horrible that she forgot it. And she wanted to make sure that when she passed the baton, the next person would remember. So there are things that we can just capture in simple systems as well as simple tools we can provide. I hear boards ask all the time, we need a pitch for if we're going to help you fundraise, right? Or right, how can we make a pitch really easy for folks? How can we make sure they have the latest stories to tell? So we can send them videos to share with their friends and oh my gosh, did you see this latest thing that I'm so proud of this organization? I want to just, do you mind if I share this 30-second clip of what the organization I serve on does or has just recently done, the impact they've made? There are little ways that we can help our boards be better evangelists and ambassadors, better fundraisers, using technology and or just updating the way we offer them tools. And then finally, a board culture of accountability and leadership. So that board chair who told me, I just wait for her to tell me what to do. That is a passive board, and it's a board chair looking to be more strategic and active and not knowing how. So let's make sure they know how to lead and that they create a culture of leadership. Like, we own our board meetings. The board puts together the agenda and leads the meeting. Sure, executive team has input and partners with them on that, and probably, participates in a lot of the putting together materials and stuff. But how much can we get the board to lead their own meetings, lead their own team, do that follow up, make sure there's the quorum? We've been putting so much of that on the staff, and I get it for expedience sake, and because board members are volunteers, and yet we can also give some of that back to our board in a way that just takes minutes. And again, if we have systems to help them manage that, um, to remind, to do some of that work to really take the lead on their own board. And then an accountability tool like a dashboard that comes to every single board meeting where they follow their own progress and discuss and track their own progress. So those are the under the roots things. I have some simple other little tips for just like more quick engaging
Absolutely.
people.
I want to pause there and say you can tell you're a researcher and you framed it in 4 pillars. I thought, but it's so well received. I'm so glad you did this, and people are going to learn
Oh,
quite a bit
thank you.
because as you articulated, it's not hard to do. Right? We all can, it can be done. There are things, that's the beauty of it. There are things that can be done. So I'm so glad you shared that. So give us the quick hitters that you have.
So a couple quick hitters.
Yeah.
The biggest one is better board meetings. So your board meetings are the best opportunity to engage your board. And let me tell you, I've been to a lot of boring board meetings, okay? And I bet many of our listeners have as well. So, and again, this is not the executive's fault or the board's fault. It's no one's fault. It's just time to re-up. It's just time to do things differently, right? So we engage in things when we're connected to the purpose. So your board members probably made that connection early on. That's why they're on your board. We show up and engage when our being present or our participation matters, right? So if we leave a board meeting like, I didn't even talk. I mean, they didn't need me here. Like, why was I here? I'm not gonna come next time if you didn't need me at the last one, right? Or if it didn't feel that way. So we also want to make sure that it's easy and doable. Right. So, yes, showing up to a meeting takes effort and time. But if the last one was really good, I'm more likely to come to the next one. In fact, I want to show up at the next one. I want to have that positive influence. So let's restructure our board meetings in 5 simple ways. The first, reduce the number of updates. So let's condense them, consolidate them, find other creative ways to share things out. And yeah, I know folks don't always follow or do the pre work. So we got to start holding it not like a lecture class of 300 at college, but like a seminar of 12. It's going to be clear because we're going to have discussions. It's going to be clear if you didn't do your homework. Let's make that part of the culture. So it's a little bit of peer pressure, right? It's obvious we're not going to get called out, but it's obvious Katie didn't read the pre work, right? So let's make sure we have discussion for a lot of reasons, not just to hold people accountable to doing the pre work,
Sure.
but discussion is really where we engage folks, and they get to use their brain power, their skills and talents to positively influence the organization. And executives, you need their brain power. Executives are burning out trying to have all the answers all to themselves. This is your thought partner team. And we're so often afraid to bring big questions to our board without feeling like we have the answers because we're afraid to look like we don't know. We've got to get over that and say, no, this is my team where I work. I pose the question. I tell them what I've tried or what we've tried, and we have them serve as thought partners here. Their perspectives are going to add value and enhance, our potential to answer this problem. So strategic discussion should be the biggest part of your board meeting, in my opinion. And let me just say, I would rather you have a 90-minute board meeting less frequently than a 1-hour board meeting that doesn't really give space for decision making and strategic discussion monthly, right? So Activate people during your board meetings. That's number 3. So let's do some of the work in the meeting. So every meeting have 5 or 10 minutes set aside to write thank you notes, to make thank you calls to donors, to send the email about inviting your friend to coffee, not just write a list of names, but actually send the request to take them out on that date. Or post social media, like here's a story, everybody share this out on your own social media platforms. Do some activity that engages them in the work that fills their role in the meeting. Make sure you leave every meeting with decision clarity. A lot of times we leave meetings not knowing what actually was decided, or also the last one, what are the next steps? So I know I have left board meetings in the past going, okay, interesting meeting. I don't know what I'm supposed to do out of this meeting. Everyone should leave your board meeting knowing what their next steps are, even if it's to think about this and take it to your next committee meeting. But there should be clarity as that every single board meeting exits the meeting around what they do to engage and activate in their role as your board member.
Oh, these are excellent. And again, not hard to do. Maybe not always easy, right? Because everybody gets busy. But out of all the, and I'm with you. Well, I'm sitting here giving you a big amen quietly because I can't interrupt you. That'd be rude. I love your point. Take 10 minutes to do work inside of a meeting. Love that. Boy, what a secret sauce idea that is. That is really,
And I
really good.
stole it. That one, I Bridges USA, I was on their board and
Wow.
they did that. And I was like, this is awesome. It's fun. It gets actual valuable work done. It reminds board members that this work is doable. You can do it in 5 or 10 minutes and really add value to the organization. That it's not like, oh, I have to sit down and do my board work. No, it's fun, it's doable, it's bite-sized, and you have a real impact.
Well, I think that's golden, and I appreciate you sharing all this. All right, so I'm going to wind it down. Last question,
Yeah.
but you also put this in the email to me as we were going back and forth, and you fundraising, and I hear this all the time when I work with boards. The board's role in fundraising, the responsibility. How do you get them to do it? So when you hear that, how do you respond? How do you encourage? How do you train board members to do the fundraising? And maybe we need to start off with what's their role in fundraising.
So their role is different at every organization, right? Some organizations have a solid fundraising team and they don't need that much from their boards. Some organizations need their boards to bring in a large portion of the annual, revenue. So it depends. That's why you've got to start with defining what fundraising means at your organization.
Mhm.
I did a poll on LinkedIn about a year ago, and one of the comments was, I mean, you can't just put a dollar amount in the budget and write board next to it. Like that, as a board member, doesn't tell me what I'm supposed to do. So the challenges I've seen, it really boils down to 2 things: a lack of comfort with fundraising and a lack of knowledge of how I help fundraise. And then when I talk to the executive side, they're like, we just I would say, I mean, vast majority of the time, what the actual organization needs from their board is simply to make introductions, right? Okay, so let's break that down for your board. What does making an introduction mean? And how do we overcome the comfort hurdle? So you've probably heard this analogy around fundraising is not we're not getting married on the first date. We're not asking someone to marry us on the first date. We're just taking them on a first date. So how do we get our board? How can we give them ideas about, first of all, finding people who are just going to be potentially interested in this mission and talking about what we do as a board member so that those people surface in our world. Who sparks an interest when you're telling them about your board service? And then what's a good possible first date for that person? Is it to bring them on a tour? Is it to bring them to an event? Is it, to send the latest video of impact for your organization? Is it to set up a coffee with the executive director or development director? There are so many ways to position the first date. Um, but I think we have to, clarify what is it we need from the board when it comes to fundraising? How does that process work? Let's take the burden. If they don't have to make the ask, make it clear to them, you don't have to ask anyone for money. I just need you to bring people to events or introduce me to people. So I think it gets a lot easier when we do that. And then again, we break it down into bite-sized chunks. It's not we need the board to raise 50 grand or individual board member, we need you to bring in five. It's we need you to, spend 10 minutes a week identifying and inviting, 10 people over the course of 6 months to do X, Y, or Z. So breaking it down, making it easy, but also making sure they're really clear and comfortable about the role that they need to play.
Oh, very good. So again, make it sound so simple and easy. And I like how you started off. It's different for every board. And you're absolutely right there because they're at different places in their trajectory and different strengths of a development team or the executive director. And so getting
Yeah.
that clarity, absolutely important. So this is going to be the catch-all questions. This has been so much good information, Katie. Before I'm going to ask you to how can people find out about you, but any other advice as you take a step back in your practice, your experience, any other advice for either executive directors or board members?
Oh, that's a big question.
If anything's
So
hot right
much.
now.
Let me see. So, I think, it's really about everybody wants everybody on each side of this partnership, the executive and board wants what's best for the organization. So my actual advice would be if if you have not recently to sit down executive and board chair and just talk about what does that ideal partnership, executive and board partnership look like? What do we need to be doing to best serve this organization as a team? And how are we going to take our board leadership team to the next level? Like, what are the things we want to prioritize and activate on to really get our board to the next level?
I think that is absolutely great and critical advice. If every organization did that, oh boy, the industry would be transformed. Katie, how can people find out a little bit more about you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn at Katie Kimple Spencer. I am also on Instagram at Katie underscore Spencer underscore consultant. So LinkedIn, I try to share what I'm hearing, seeing, thinking. On Instagram, it's more daily thoughts or things that are emerging out of conversations with leaders. So more like little tidbits, but those are great places to find me, connect, message me. I answer any message that comes my way. So I'm always happy to really engage with leaders and learn more from all of you. So tell me what you heard that either you're like, Katie, I tried that. You might need another strategy woman. Like, tell me what you all think. I'd love to hear. So I am continually improving and can share better information and better ideas with more leaders.
Well, I'm going to vouch for your LinkedIn presence and the material you put out there. It's extremely good. And that was Katie
Thank you.
Kimple with a K, Kimple Spencer. And you can find her. She does really remarkable stuff on LinkedIn. Katie, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom. The audience is better off because of it. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. This was really fun.
All right, now the audience's favorite segment, Recapping with Reed. Reed, Katie had so much good stuff there. I've really enjoyed getting to know her because she's so knowledgeable and articulate. But now this is your turn. What are your 3 takeaways from today's podcast?
Yeah, she had some great stuff, and she broke it down in a very digestible fashion, which makes it easy for me to regurgitate that. So, what is board engagement? She talked about this from both the executive director side and the board side. And so, the executive directors want people to show up constantly, like to at least to minimum to get a quorum. Want people to be responsive, even if that's saying like to an email, hey, receive this, like, just be responsive. And the executive director doesn't want to feel like they're chasing the board around, and board members want more clarity on what they need to do and how to actually do that work.
So is that 3 or number 1?
That's number 1.
All right. Number 2. I think you're cheating, but go ahead. Number 2.
I have my notes right here, so
Okay.
Is that cheating? This is an open book test. Yeah. So she had 4 pillars as well for how we can create a more engaged board. Clarify the role and partnership with the board. Every board has a different role. Do you need to be a fundraising board? Do you need to be a startup board? Are you a mature board? Whatever that role is, get clarity on that. Map out what the board does annually on a calendar. Create systems and tools for those recurring tasks. We hear it a lot, and she mentioned it as well. It'd be so nice if we had a pitch for fundraising or a pitch for our organization. So just simple things like that. And then create a culture of accountability and leadership within the board.
Yes.
That's number 2.
I know that was number 2. I'm doing the math. I think you're really up to about 8, but this is all really good stuff. And what is number 3?
She had 5 tips as well. Yes, and it was about having better board meetings. So reduce your number of updates,
Yes.
whether that's through consent agenda or something. Make sure that you're reducing. It's not just a report out meeting. Focus on strategy within the meeting. Activate people during the board meetings. If you show up and not everybody talked, why were they there? Leave every meeting with decision clarity. A lot of times we're leaving board meetings and we're like, what am I doing? And then have next steps, which is kind of along those same lines. Leave with some clarity.
Yeah, all about running a good meeting. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Recapping Reed with his many takeaways from our interview with Katie Spencer. Reed, really appreciate it. And everyone else, we will I-501 see you next week.